Welcome back to In the Moment with Dr. Brett Jones. This is episode 2, and today I am joined by Stephanie. And Stephanie was just filling me in about something that she's been experiencing. She just started the Whole 30 program, which for those of you that are not in the know about the Whole 30, it's basically a 30-day program that's pretty strict, similar to paleo, where you have some restrictions of the foods that you're eating, but again, the idea is to kind of reset the system, eating whole foods. However, she's day 8, and she was just starting to experience, you said, some pain, right?
Yeah.
More on the right side?
Yep.
And sometimes why we can experience that, she actually mentioned it, that it might be her body detoxifying. And so I think it's also a good point to even talk about symptoms. There are symptoms of dis-ease, and there are symptoms of healing and health. And how do you know the difference? Again, the main way to know the difference is it cyclical or is it in a pattern? Often if the same symptoms are continually showing up throughout your life, that is usually a symptom of dis-ease, right, or sickness. Whereas if it's a new emerging symptom, a lot of times that can be related more to a symptom of healing and health. And so when our body's going through a detoxification process, I do a lot of water fasting. Sometimes in water fasting, you'll start to feel a little something, but a lot of times that's actually your body getting rid of what's no longer needed. And as you're getting rid of those toxins, it can be uncomfortable. And so she was experiencing a little bit of that. And so let's go ahead and check out her spine and see what we find. You ready?
Yes.
Cool. Let's actually see you walk first.
Right.
So we'll do a little gait analysis with Stephanie as well. Go ahead. Cool. Little higher on the left ilium, so on the left side, she's carrying a little higher. But other than that, not too bad. A little anterior roll on the right shoulder. Go ahead and lay face down for me. And before we got started, I was actually palpating her cervicals, and I felt a lot of upper cervical tension on the right side. And she was also talking about how she's been experiencing shoulder, kind of like when she was experiencing what she was experiencing, was going into the shoulder, which this is common for a lot of people. Let's talk about this. A lot of people get like this shoulder pain right in the medial border of the scapula, or you could also call it the shoulder blade, right? So right here, a lot of people will experience pain, and it's not always because something's messed up here. A lot of times what we found is that when the atlas is rotated posterior, so the atlas is the top bone of the neck, when it rotates backwards, more on one side than on the other, there's a muscle called the levator scapula. And that levator scapula muscle can then become shortened. And when it's shortened, it can carry more tension, and it can often carry more tension right there. Now, do you feel that right there?
Yeah.
So right away, okay, what I'm palpating again is I'm basically palpating what we could call like a taut and tender fiber. Because basically anytime you have dysfunction of the spine, you're going to have an inflammatory process. And so if you have an inflammatory process, you can have spastic muscles, and you can also have inflamed joints. And so when we palpate, you can just press in just a little bit, and if you're noticing that there's some tenderness there, then that could be an indicator, okay, well, either that there's dysfunction or spasticity of that muscle, or it can feed into the joint. Because again, every muscle connects to a bone, right? And so if there's a muscle that's angry, it's connected to a bone somewhere. And the beautiful thing about chiropractic is that you can make an adjustment, and when you make an adjustment, you affect the Golgi tendon organ and the muscle spindle of the muscle. Those both respond to a quick stretch, meaning that you can get a muscle to relax from a chiropractic adjustment by adjusting the spine, right? Because again, we're talking about that levator scapula attaches to the atlas. So what I have found is by adjusting atlas, you can actually calm that area. So the first thing that I'm actually finding is actually a T8 fixation. So we're going to start there. And Stephanie actually needs a little bit of counterclockwise torque. So I'm going to do a 2-hand contact. I'm contacting actually with these little dots near my thumbs. This is actually a technique I learned from a Dr. Arno Bernier. So right there, boom. So we just delivered the T8 through the T9 facet. You see the breath change as soon as we adjust. And so what happens with a lot of people, they start getting adjusted and they notice how much their breathing is improving. We have a lot of people that have allergies and asthma, who their allergies and asthma starts improving. Just start thinking about this. Every single rib in the front, some will connect to your sternum, but all ribs connect to your spine. So people think ribs, they always think front. those ribs continue and connect to your spine. So if the spine is stuck, it doesn't allow the ribs to move like they should, right? And so by adjusting the spine and getting the spine free, you get better rib cage motion, you get better breath. How important is your breath? Well, one of the things your brain requires is oxygen. So in order to get proper oxygen, you want to make sure you have a proper biomechanics of your rib cage, and that's an important thing that chiropractic can definitely help with. Cool. So when checking out Stephanie's lower, not a lot going on, to be honest. We'd be really fishing if we wanted to do something there. So I'm gonna go ahead and have you roll to your back. Again, legs were even. We had good pelvic motion. Another big thing about chiropractic is you don't want to adjust what doesn't need to be adjusted, right? And so the main areas that we're looking for are areas that are stuck and not moving properly. So it doesn't really do me good to just manipulate the entire spine. When they first started chiropractic, that was one of the techniques that they first used, but that was back in 1895. And so about until 1910, they continued to rack every single vertebra back into place until they found out that as actually specificity that started to get more sick people well. So real important to be as specific as possible and only adjust what needs to be adjusted when it needs to be adjusted. And so for Stephanie, I have a posterior right atlas. There also is an approximation of that atlas to occiput. So an adjustment that I would really like to do for her that's going to help unwind that is a seated move. So I want you to go ahead and sit up and face the camera. So they originally called this the master cervical. It was actually done quite a bit by Leo Spears, who created the Spears Hospital. And so for those of you that don't know, this is a really cool fact. There was a huge hospital I think it was just outside of Denver, Colorado. I think they had 800 beds. It was popular like in the 50s to 60s, ran by this guy, Leo Spears. And at the time, they were taking care, again, of the sickest of the sick, or going to see chiropractors. And they had amazing, miraculous healing stories. One of them, or a few of them, were about kids with polio that had become paralyzed. A lot of them had a will in, but then were walking out under Leo Spears' care and his team's care. And so really cool to look up if you can find that history. It was the Spears Hospital in Denver, Colorado. Did you know that? Now you know that. I'm a little bit of a chiropractic history fiend, I guess. I love hearing of the stories of what they used to do and hopefully recreating that, because I think we lost a little bit of our original splendor. So again, C1, posterior on this right side. That means when I say posterior, it's rotated back. And so what we're going to do is we're going to provide an adjustment. And I'm actually going to come over here. And so I'm going to have Stephanie tilt her head over to the right side. And so what we're looking for is getting this advantageous setup of biomechanics so that when we deliver our adjustment, we can get that posterior to anterior rotation. So right here. There it is. Good. How was that?
Wow.
Wow. As that came through, lay on your back, I noticed a little bit of catch at the C3, C4. And so, I don't know if you guys have ever been to a carnival, like when you go play one of those games where you like took the big sledgehammer and went boom, and then you watch the thing go. That's kind of how I like to explain, like sometimes when you're doing an adjustment, you want to listen and feel for where potential, like the next misalignment subluxation is. The reason for that is in a clear system, when you put an adjustment through, it should just carry not the actual cavitation, the cavitation is the sound, but the actual reverberation of that vibration should go through the entire spine, clean. When you do an adjustment and you kind of hear or feel it catch somewhere else, that's usually the next area that is more than likely also going to be dysfunctional. And so when I did that adjustment, I felt a catch on the C3, C4 on the left. And so right here, C3, C4 on the left. And so we're going to go ahead and adjust this. And again, that was just coming through just the C3, C4 facet on the left side. Whew. And since she's been doing some detox work, now when I check the system, I do feel like there's some actually adhesion around the cord at the T2 level. So what I'm going to be doing is what's called a long lever adjustment, but you can do a long lever adjustment and be specific, meaning that oftentimes when I say long lever, it's like you're using another area of the spine to adjust somewhere else. So So I'm going to be using our occiput, base of the skull, to actually adjust T2. Now, how do you be specific in that? When you actually start to distract the occiput, or distract, because you can do the same thing through a foot. When you start to distract it, what you're looking and listening for is when does that T1, T2 start to disengage. And then from there, you provide a quick input. Go ahead and bend your legs just slightly. There we go. So again, I'm now sinking in, and now I got to put on my listening device. So I'm listening through my hands, through my heart, boom. So T1, T2, occiput, distraction. How are we doing? It's funny, you know, we usually don't talk during our adjustments, and so to be talking through it's a little different because people usually want to chill and integrate and relax, because again, anything that you adjust, anytime you adjust near the upper cervical, or even sometimes in the lower, like near the sacrum or even coccyx, there's a lot of mechanoreceptors there, especially in the upper neck. Mechanoreceptors basically is like things that receive information to the brain, right? And so anytime you have a high density of mechanoreceptors, that means when an adjustment happens, it's like a gush of flow of information, of nerve signals that are going to go to the brain. And so it's nice to give people time to relax and integrate and let that all absorb and sink in. And so now when I do that little distraction of the occiput, I can see that the system is clear, that it's flowing all the way through. I could recheck legs. Legs are balanced. We're gonna let her chill. But there it is, y'all. Episode 2. If you have any unique things going on and you live in the Bay Area, or you're down to travel to the Bay Area, reach out to us at The Source Chiropractic. Our number is 510-328-1381. Again, if this is your first time on the channel, make sure you subscribe, and you can give us some likes on Facebook, and we'll see you next time.